the war in Ukraine. The US President Joe Biden is flying to Brussels for a summit of NATO leaders tomorrow, where they're expected to approve the deployment of more forces in Eastern Europe. 4 weeks into Russia's invasion, this is the latest situation on the ground in Ukraine. The majority of Russian gains are in the north, east and south, with a three-pronged advance on the capital, Kyiv. From the south, in annexed Crimea, Russia's advancing on three fronts: north into the mainland, eastwards, where they've surrounded the vital seaport of Mariupol, and west towards Odessa and the nearby city of Mykolaiv, from where John Ray reports. And a warning, his report does contain images some viewers may find distressing.
Under fire and outgunned. This is the moment Russia's advance came undone. On the road west to the Black Sea coast and a plan to cut Ukraine off from the sea, they came instead to a dead halt. These pictures, say the Ukrainians, show soldiers who expected to march in triumph into the next captured city, instead ending their day as prisoners of war. And what they left behind suggests an army ill-equipped and badly prepared. These are field dressings dated 1978, long before they or the Ukrainian troops who man what is now the front line were born, where they vowed to give their lives in defense of their country. It is a sacrifice Sergei's brother Daniel has already made. Today would have been his 18th birthday. As a kid, he wanted to follow me into the army, says Sergei.
I feel hatred to those who killed him. I will avenge his death, and my revenge will be terrible.
His chance will come. The Russians are dug in just a few miles away. There are many such trenches dug into the Ukrainian countryside. Narrow and shallow lines of defence, but they're enough to stop the Russians for now. First, Vladimir Putin's forces must take Mariupol to the east, where these ruined streets are a measure of the war's painful progress, of Russian brutality and Ukrainian resilience. The Kremlin today agreed safe passage for a few civilians, though often that's proved a false promise of safety. Rules mean nothing to the Russians, the regional governor Pavlo Kirilenko told us. The convoys are under constant fire, despite the fact they're moving on an agreed route. And the Russians still possess overwhelming firepower. Sooner or later, they will resume their advance. That is the belief of the troops that stand in their way, ready to stop them a second time. John Ray, ITV News, Mykolaiv.
Well, in the past hour, the United States has formally accused Russian forces of committing war crimes in Ukraine. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said it was based on a careful review of evidence. And that comes as ITV News has filmed the suburbs of Kyiv being targeted with what appears to be white phosphorus. Now, the substance can be extremely harmful and is not meant to be used in highly populated areas. Our global security editor, Rode Kachu, sent this report from Kyiv.
It starts with a few speckles of white light. Then it grows. This is what we saw looking northwest across the city last night. Showers of white light which continued for several minutes. Experts who've analysed our footage say what we saw lighting up the encircled suburbs were the burning bombs known as white phosphorus, a substance which causes horrific injuries. It's not banned, but attacks that cause disproportionate damage to civilians are. As the curfew ended, we went closer to the front line and found it was moving closer to us. Destroyed buildings marked the spot where a soldier was killed earlier this week.
Була збита ракета на уламки, які упали, і загинув наш побратим. І до сих пір йде, кожен ранок ідуть обстріли, днем ідуть обстріли.
Closer to town, a house, a home was still smouldering. Hours earlier, neighbours were shaken and woken by a series of booms, half a dozen reminders that residential areas are not immune from any of this. What's different here is the location. This is the closest strike that we've seen to the centre of the city. Inside the city, the mayor and his boxing star brother said the Russians on the edge of town should turn around. They acknowledged that the methods being used might be turning even more sinister. Can you share with us any evidence that you might have seen of potential Russian war crimes?
How much of an evidence of the war crime you want to see when you have civilians killed, over 300 children been injured and killed? How much more you want to see and support?
Rockets and shelling inside the city, fighting on the edge of it. And yet there is no evidence that Russia is much closer to taking the capital. Rohit Kachru, ITV News, Kyiv.
Well, to a welcome bit of slightly brighter news. And if you were watching on Monday, you'll have seen our story about a group of more than 50 children, many of them orphans, who had been rescued from Ukraine and were due to fly to the UK from Poland. We may remember that journey was put on hold at the last minute because of paperwork. But this evening, they finally set off, departing from Warsaw Airport in the past hour.